In this video, I'm going to explain the notes that should go on the left side of the foldable where you have the percent is over of equals percent out of 100. So if you have already done this top section of what is 40% of 35, then you need to stop and go back to my homework page and look to see the timestamp that I've listed there for where to fast forward to so you get to the bottom part. So if you don't have the top of this filled in, then you start the video right here. Remember that you need to pause whenever you need to stop and catch up with what I'm saying. So all of this needs to be written in your composition book, and I will be checking for it next class. So you need to write the question, what is 40% of 35? And at this point, you can also go ahead and write our setup of is over of equals percent out of 100. And I've gone ahead and rewritten my fraction bars with the equal sign because I'm going to fill in the information from our question of what we do know and what we don't know down here into this ratio, or actually proportion, because we have two fractions that are equal to each other. So let's see. In this case, it says what is. When it says what is, that tells us the is value is something we don't know because it says what. Therefore, that's going to tell me that my unknown goes in the is spot in this fraction. So now we need to go on to 40%. Remember that in the is over of equals percent out of 100, the percent is going to be written as a percent, not a decimal number, unless it's a fraction of a percent. So unless it's like 0.1% or something like that. But if you have 75%, this will be 75 over 100. If you have 33%, it would be 33 over 100. In this case, we have 40%. So the 40% comes from this part of the problem, and it goes here on the top. And then last it says of 35, and of 35 goes in the of spot. So I'm going to write 35 there. And then always 100 goes in this bottom spot. So that's not going to change ever. That the 40% would be 40 out of 100. So now we need to figure out what that x value would be, and I'm going to show you three different ways to solve this. So one is starting out with that equation. I'm going to rewrite it down here. And we're going to solve this step by step. So we have x over 35 equals 40 over 100, and we need to solve for x. And before we multiply both sides by 35 to get rid of that divided by 35 here, we need to simplify mathematically over here. So 40 divided by 100 is 40 hundredths, or 4/10. And basically what you're doing right there is rewriting the percent as a decimal. But the way you write a percent, like 40% as a decimal, is by dividing by 100. When you divide by 100, you get 0.4 or 0.40. We still have x over 35 on the left, and I'm going to multiply both sides by 35 to isolate the variable. So when I do that, I'm going to have x on the left side of the equation, and on the right side, I'm going to have 40 hundredths times 35. And remember, I said you could use a calculator on this part if you'd like. You have to show me how you got that, though. You have to show me that part of solving the equation. But when you do that, 40% 40 hundredths times 35 equals 14. Solving another way, remember we have this equation written down on the right side below your foldable. The percent, written as a decimal, times the whole value, which corresponds to the of part here. So of is the same as the whole. Percent times the whole equals the part, which is the is value. So we can say percent times of equals is. So let's set up that equation. Percent written as a decimal times of equals is. So the percent written as a decimal is 0.4 or 0.40. And we're going to multiply that by the of value. That's why we're doing this situation right here where we're writing it all out so that we can easily identify what goes where. So 35 is the of value, and that's going to equal the is value, which we have in the is spot here is x. So now to solve for the value of x, we just need to multiply, and you might notice that 40 hundredths times 35 is exactly what we did over here on the left to solve it the other way. 40 hundredths times 35 is 14. The way we interpret that back to the original equation is when it says what is 40% of 35? 14 is that is value. So we can say 14 is 40% of 35. And that tells us what this solution is, which matches the solution that we got the other way. When you're doing your homework problems, you only have to choose one of these ways to do this. A third way, not my favorite way, but I will allow it as long as you show the equation, is cross multiplication. So in cross multiplication, we would multiply x times 100, which is 100x, and that should be equal to multiplying in the other direction, 35 times 40. And you have to show me that problem as well as what you get when you multiply 35 times 40. When you do that, it equals 1,400. So we have 100x equals 1,400. We're going to divide both sides by 100. And the solution is x equals 14. There's an easy check for this, and it doesn't involve doing our traditional check of how we have checked the equations we've been solving. We're going to put 14 back into that original equation we set up here. We're checking to see, does 14 divided by 35 equal the same thing as 40 divided by 100? When you do 14 divided by 35, it gives you 40 hundredths. And when you do 40 divided by 100, it gives you 40 hundredths as a quotient. So that checks out, and we know that 14 is 40% of 35. Moving on to the next section. 20 is 80% of what number? So I have already set up here is over of equals percent out of 100. So if you haven't written this question down, 20 is 80% of what number? Go ahead and pause and do that now. So we're going to start out with 20 is. This time we know what goes in the is spot. That's 20. We also can see what goes in the percent spot at 80%. Now we get to of what number? What number means that we don't know what that number is. So of is going to be the missing number in this situation. And then of course we have 100 as our denominator on that side. So starting with the original way of thinking about this, like we did in the previous problem, we have 20 over x equals 80 over 100. And if you started doing the same thing that we had done up here and divide by 100 and then multiply by what's on the other side, we have a little bit of a problem here because x is not the numerator, it's the denominator. And so that makes things a little bit more complicated, but if you step back for a minute and just look at the numbers that are there, and remember these are equivalent ratios, then we can use proportional reasoning to solve this. To get from 20 to 80, you multiply by 4. So to get the value of x, we're going in the opposite direction, so we can divide by 4. So go back and rely on that proportional reasoning when the numbers play nicely with each other. So we have an obvious connection from going from 20 to 80. We can use that connection to go backwards from 100 to our x value. 100 divided by 4 is 25. So our solution here is x equals 25, and to put that in the context of the problem, 20 is 80% of 25. Solving this another way, let's go to the percent times the of number equals is. So back over here. We know that 20 is the percent from up here. We're going to multiply that, but remember that the percent needs to be written as a decimal. So 20% is 0.2 for 20 hundredths. I'm going to multiply that by the of value. Where's the of value? That's what we're trying to find. So that's going to be x. That will be equal to the is value, which is 20. To solve, oh, it was 80%. So fix that. I'm sorry. I was thinking it was 20%. It's 80%, but you probably already realized that I had made a mistake there. So now, to simplify, I need to divide both sides by 80 hundredths to be able to solve for the x value. And you can use a calculator again for this, as long as you've shown me where it's coming from, that 20 divided by 80 hundredths is 25. So two different ways of solving this, but you can choose whichever way you want to solve. I'm not going to do it a third way, but I am going to show you how you know that you're right. So we have 20 as the top number in this ratio, and 25 is the of value. 20 out of 25, does that mean the same amount as 80 over 100? Well, we can use proportional reasoning to show why those would be equivalent to each other, but we can also just do the division. So 20 divided by 25 is 8/10 or 80 hundredths, and 80 divided by 100 is 80 hundredths. So those are equivalent, and we know we're correct. Last, I wanted to give you a word problem that would be more of the part to whole relationship rather than is over of. So 30% of the girls on the team have brown hair. So we can go ahead and write the 30% in our equivalent ratios. 30% of the girls on the team have brown hair. If there are 20 girls on the team, how many have brown hair? So part of the girls would have brown hair. The total would be all of the girls on the team, so that's going to be 20. You can see how you could use proportional reasoning to solve this. 20 times 100, 20 times 5 equals 100. So going backwards, we would need to divide by 5, and that would tell us a total of 6 girls have brown hair on the team. If you're doing it the equation way of percent times whole equals part, then the percent would be 30%, remember written as a decimal, times the times the whole, percent times whole equals part. The whole team is 20 girls. and that equals the part, which we don't know yet because we don't know how many girls have brown hair. So when we do 20 times 30 hundredths, you get 6. So the total number of girls with brown hair is 6. To check that, we can see if 6 out of 20 is equivalent to 30 out of 100. And if you do the math of that, both of them come out to 0.3. That's it.